What's coming in 2016? Hey guys, and welcome to some more Star Citizen. 2015 was a hell of a ride, but what's coming in 2016? Today I'm talking about some of the expected or at least planned releases for Star Citizen this year, as well as some of my educated predictions. I say educated predictions because I don't entirely know the full workings of CIG. Monthly updates. CIG's patch strategy is going to be less feature driven and instead more date driven, with a goal to release a new update each month. So in January we will see Star Citizen Alpha 2.2. In the past they have held off on releases to wait for other features. The new system, as they did with 2.1, would allow them to test a feature like physicalized EVA and rework it if needed at a much earlier stage. But will also help them keep the community at large happy with a constant flow of updates. With that said, there is a loose plan or grouping of content drops, and let's go through some of them now. Persistence and shopping. Persistence and shopping is likely to be the next couple of major updates that we'll see. This will start to phase out the Voyager Direct website platform for UEC or in-game purchases and allow us to purchase items in shops in-game. Moreover, to Persistence, at least anyway, we'll be able to customise ships and character loadouts, clothing, that sort of stuff, to a certain extent, and for those changes to persist. But this is going to allow us to be able to buy different stuff for our ships, FPS guns, clothing, armour, trophies, and lots more different pieces. They talked about the Subsumption update last year as well. So this was supposed to add the Nyx aerial landing zone and intelligent NPCs into the game. And when I say intelligent NPCs, I mean they are dynamically moving around their own business and lives in the verse, so they'll be moving around from the bars, maybe ordering a drink, maybe looking like they're purchasing stuff, that sort of stuff. And with Nyx landing zone in mind, we're going to see planetary landings in 2016. On the holiday livestream, we saw the early stages of planetary landings. It showcased Delmar, otherwise known as the Nyx landing zone, being landed upon, and this was absolutely amazing because it was all procedurally generated. This procedurally generated tech will allow Star Citizen to produce highly detailed worlds with less resources necessary. It's going to be a lot less resource hungry than it would be if they had to build the entire world and have it there. Also, its procedurally generated nature doesn't mean that it's going to be different for everyone. Once those planets have been discovered and seen, they're going to be the same for everyone. All those variables are generated by a server seed, which will remain unchanged. But does this mean that private servers, if they have a different seed, will generate different planets, or at least different terrain on planets? Well, I suppose if you run private servers and you can have different seeds, then yes, it would. Again, like Subsumption, the Final Frontier and Quantum updates were discussed earlier last year. So the idea here is that the Final Frontier update was supposed to enable you and your friends to accept missions planet-side and then allow you to head out into space together to accomplish them. We already have that in the form of Port Olisar. We're able to do missions together as a group of friends. Now, yes, at the moment in 2.0 and 2.1, the parting system is not to the best, and that will be worked on heavily in 2016. I expect that to be done very early on, having a proper party system. But we already have missions. So the Final Frontier update is partially already done, so I expect that to be more complex later though. So we're going to have much more complex missions that we can do in multiplayer that we'll probably get some sort of reward for. Some form of temporary currency. They have talked about doing some sort of temporary rec or temporary currency, but they haven't gone too much into that yet. We'll find more as the year develops. There's also the Quantum update. The Quantum update was supposed to be full-blown solar system navigation maps, allowing you to access any part of the current system, including cities, on any of the 3 planets that they're planning to have: Hurston, Microtech, and Crusader. So that's a much larger scope thing. We're also likely to see abilities to use warp gates or jump gates That's going to be really exciting when they add those features, but again, we'll talk about that in a bit. But we'll be getting the Nyx landing zone first, and eventually be able to land on that, as well as other planets. And it's likely to appear as a large asteroid near Port Olisar in the near future, before being moved onto its rightful system later on. They're going to be taking some liberties with the alpha, putting stuff where it might not necessarily be in lore, like the Nyx landing zone. That will probably appear in Crusader in the Stanton system. Another major system that will be done probably early 2016 is the new item system and the item size standardization stuff. So for a long time now, Star Citizen has been promising this new item system. So this is for the equipment on ships, basically. What we have at the moment is basically just placeholders for how systems will work on a ship. The new item system has already been integrated into the dev stream code. And it's been talked about before. Matt Sherman talked about it on ATV Season 2, Episode 1, I think. Basically said there are 9 main types of components that will go into a ship. There's going to be an early rollout that we'll get relatively soon, which will contain power plants, shield generators, and coolers. So these components drive much of a ship's functionality, and they're important to get working and for all the pipes to get working through them, so it's great for us to be able to test them earlier rather than later. The system that we previously had would change what would have been like single slot components, so you'd have like one power plant, into multiple slots. So for example, a 300i would have had a single power plant. That 300i would now have 3 power plants rather than 1. The idea here is to give you more tuning and customization options. Now, it might be that some power plants take up more than 1 slot and that sort of stuff. Not entirely sure. We'll have to see what happens when the actual item system comes out. But the idea of this will allow you to have more choice for combat, stealth, or whatever the role you want to make your ship, even if you're just trying to do it on a budget. This will also aid in item standardization as well. So the idea with item standardization is that all size 1 power plants, for example, will be pretty much the same size, and you want that across the board. So all size 2 power plants would be around the same size as all size 2 power plants. Damage states and improvements. As we saw with the Gladius last year with the new damage states and meshes, as well as the Constellation and Andromeda's rework, lots of ships will be getting reworks, updates, and all that jazz this year, trying to bring them up to the current gold level standard that CIG have kind of implemented. The ability to cut ships into chunks and still have them having some functionality is amazing to behold, and is heavily connected to the pipe and new item systems. The explosions and the effects that we have with these systems and with these ships getting damaged is just the first iteration of that. Expect a lot of polish, and if you think the game is pretty now, this is just the tip of the space iceberg. So let's talk a little bit about individual ships and possible releases for 2016. This is much more educated guessy because they're ready when they're ready. We've got a very rough idea of some of the ships that might be available. As with the new content drops, they're going to be doing them approximately monthly, and we'll get what we get. We know that the plan in January is to get the Starfarer hangar ready, and this is the fuel gathering hauler, and it will get added to the game as flyable in Port Olisar as soon as that fuel gathering and refuel mechanic is finished. And then we'll be able to fly that around Port Olisar, and we'll be able to refuel people in space and be able to gather fuel. We also know that the new Corvette is being developed. We don't know anything really about the new Corvette. All we know is the replacement for the Idris, which was previously Corvette and then became a frigate because it just increased in size and scope. We don't know any other details. We don't even know what manufacturer it's going to be. I know I want one. I hope it's going to be a Drake manufacturer, because I think that would just be cool. It should be announced, hopefully, in 2016 and go on concept sale. So we'll have to wait and see about that. The Cutlass, new and improved. There have been loads of issues with the Cutlass in 2015, and I'm looking forward to seeing what becomes of it this year. Hopefully we'll get a nice new improved Cutlass that will make some people at least happy. The Reliant will be hangar ready relatively soon, and then flight ready soon after that. The Sabre is already hangar ready, and I expect that it isn't too far off being flight ready, as it doesn't require any new gaming mechanics at all. It's just a stealth fighter, and it's supposed to be able to compete with that Super Hornet. So we'll have to see. I'm very excited about the Sabre. The Vanguard's pretty much in this very similar situation to the Sabre. Obviously, those variants of the Vanguard will take a little bit more time. Hopefully we'll see them in 2016, might be pushed to 2017. We have a lot of interior work that we've seen on the Caterpillar as well, so I'd expect that to probably come out as flyable at some point in 2016. And we also have seen, at least on the concept side, a lot of work on the Jean Scout, and I expect that to be ready in the first quarter, probably, of 2016, at the very least hangar ready. The P-72, I don't think there's going to be much work needed to get a P-72 out as hangar ready and flyable, so expect to see that relatively soon. There's lots of variants for ships that will start becoming flyable, so the Connies and the Freelancers. They're not going to take too much work to become flyable. Obviously, they're not a massively high priority because they've got the base ships flying around, and they probably don't need them for Squadron 42, although there might be some surprises. And that's definitely one of the main things that's going to define releases in 2016. Does it need to be ready for Squadron 42? And we'll talk more about Squadron 42 in a minute. So, with ships like the Reclaimer, the Orion, the Crucible, some of the Hull series, I'd expect these to be released as soon as their corresponding game mechanics are ready for testing. So we'll have the Reclaimer when the salvage is ready to be tested in Port Olisar, we'll have the Orion when mining's ready, we'll have the Crucible when repair's ready, although we'll probably get some handheld repair tools before we get the Crucible, and when they're trying to do more transporty stuff, I expect we'll get some of the smaller Hull series to test out as well. Call me crazy, but I'd also expect to possibly see hangar-ready Idris in the not-too-distant future. So, in my head, this is how I see it. Like, it is just a possibility, but I expect that you can load into an Idris like you could load into a hangar, so you can literally choose it as a hangar option if you had an Idris. Because we know the internals for the Idris are already there, this will just enable you to walk about. We've seen the Morrow tour at CitizenCon, and we know those internals are pretty much done, so why not? And the same is kind of true for the Javelin. The interior's done. Now, we kind of got a little hint that you might be piloting or flying or doing something on a Javelin near the beginning of Squadron 42 Episode 1, briefly, because they were saying about it on one of the live streams. And obviously, Squadron 42 stuff, that is getting priority work. So we're seeing some beautiful interiors of the Idris and the Javelin. So why not have those capital ships as hangars? Why not be able to walk around them? And then that's just my idea, and I hope that CIG do it, but I think it's quite a possible thing. And there's ships like the Endeavour and the Banu Merchantman, the 890 Jump, Carrack, Pisces, X-85, Redeemer, that I just don't know about. I'm not sure if they're needed for Squadron 42 at all, and I have no idea what priority they are for CIG, because some of the mechanics that those ships do can be done by other ships. There's the Buccaneer they've talked about, and the Dragonfly, and some other concept ships that they've talked about that might not even exist, or they might exist, they might be announced fully in 2016, they might not. We know there's probably going to be some concept ship sales and some other surprises in 2016, but CIG play some of those concept sales very close to their chest, and knowing when a lot of these ships will be released, announced, or flyable is quite hard to tell when they're not entirely sure themselves. Character rig and animation updates. So, we were given a little taste of physicalized EVA in Star Citizen Alpha 2.1 on the PTU, but that was quickly removed as it needed some more work. In 2016, we can expect physicalized EVA to be working properly with its own mini IFCS. Also, we'll be getting the female character models. They've been working on getting the female locomotion sets done and everything mapped to the skeletons last time I checked. So that's already quite far along. For a while, in general, the animations have needed a bit of a polish. In Port Olisar, we can see characters glitching or not matching up to where they're supposed to be in game. And in fact, that was one of the blockers for Star Marine, the FPS, all the way back in April 2015. So, it's going to be getting a lot of attention, and I know it's been getting a lot of attention over many months. So getting these animations to line up, getting the dukes to work, getting the netcode all sorted so that we can have that looking great and the hitboxes and everything working perfectly for Port Olisar, for the PU, for all that jazz. All of this together is going to give us some great characters, and we should get a good amount of customization for our characters at some point too this year, as it's going to be important for Squadron 42. The customization is likely to be mainly facial though. Builds and heights of characters, at least in the first iterations of the game, are going to have to be the same due to hitboxes and locations. People would otherwise just build a little tiny character, really thin, shortest character possible, so that you didn't get hit by so many bullets. The elusive Star Marine, the Star Citizen FPS arcade-style shooter in the style of Arena Commander, was delayed into 2015 in favour of getting the FPS elements into Star Citizen Alpha 2.0. The more arcade style of Star Marine needed work. So, as I said, it's going to be like our Arena Commander, but for FPS, and you're going to be able to have scoreboards there. It's going to be relatively quick matches with matchmaking, and you'll be able to jump straight in, and you'll be in a safe test environment that's not going to get your character killed permanently. In the actual PU, there is permadeath, but in this, in the arcade experience, you could just respawn and just go into another game. There's no real risk. So it's not going to be the highest priority for CIG at the moment, but I expect that it's had a lot of work done to it, and as other areas of the game get fleshed out and they require more info and balance on the side of the first-person shooter stuff, it's going to become more vital for them to get that done. So I'd expect to see it with the improved animations and character stuff. They'll get those improved animations, the jukes and all that stuff done first, and then I expect to see Star Marine almost certainly in 2016. So let's talk about the big one, probably the largest release in 2016, probably, because we might have some surprises, we might get beta and alpha of other stuff, but Squadron 42 Episode 1. So Squadron 42 is the single-player AAA game from the Star Citizen universe that will be connected to the PU. It's all going to connect together. It will be released in 3 parts, Squadron 42, so we're going to get Episode 1 in 2016. At least that's the plan. It should be here. It's likely to include 10 or more in-depth missions that include preparation, launching, flying, first-person shooter combat, space combat, stealth, interaction with NPCs, lots and lots of different stuff. There's also likely to be a lot to do between the missions. You'll be able to explore your ship, talk to the crew, and discover more about the universe. As a really rough idea of playtime, really rough, Squadron 42 is likely to take 20 hours for an average first playthrough, according to Ben, but there might be up to 50 hours of content if you did all the missions and all the branches and all the possibilities. Elements of Squadron 42 will unlock things for your character in the PU, as well as give a lot more information about the lore and how to play the game. It's very much worth playing, even if you're just a multiplayer person, because you're going to get bonuses, basically. You're going to be able to unlock stuff for your characters in the PU, in the persistent universe, just by playing the single-player experience. So all of those timings and estimated playthrough stuff, that's all extreme early guesstimates by Ben and Chris, and that sort of stuff. It's not to be taken 100% literally. We'll have to see how it plays out, but yeah, rough, educated guesstimates. We know your main enemy in Squadron 42, at least at the start, is the Vandal, a nomadic warrior race. We know some of the main characters have been fully revealed, so we've got like Mark Hamill playing Steve Colton, John Rhys-Davies playing Randall Graves, and Gary Oldman playing Admiral Bishop. They've had like kind of expos and interviews about their characters already, and we're likely to see that more for all of the other cast, which is pretty awesome. We're also likely to find out a lot more about the secondary cast that we have no real idea about. Obviously, we'll have more of those character reveals as we close in on the release of Episode 1, and Chris has also stated that he's going to be spending a lot of time split between the offices in the US and the UK, and probably quite a bit of time in Germany as well, I'd expect, in 2016, because he wants to help coordinate that Squadron 42 push. It's going to be awesome. I'm so looking forward to this. I mean, I've not wanted to play a single-player game like this in about, 8 years, so I'm pretty excited. And as it looks like Squadron 42 Episode 1 will be released this year, we're going to start to see true system specs and optimization being stated. So we're going to be able to work out what system we are going to need to be able to play this game, enabling us to correctly update our systems, or at least update our expectations of what kind of level we're going to be able to run the game at. I hope it comes a lot more optimized, less resource hungry, but also a lot more scalable. So if you want to run it in 4K or more on max settings, and you've got the beastie rig, then you can do that. But if you've got a modest computer, then you can run it perfectly fine on medium or low settings. The Star Citizen branded Hotassen keyboard. So pre-orders for the Star Citizen branded mid-range Hotassen keyboard from Cytec were pushed back until January 2016. So we should see these making a debut this year, along with the high-end Hotass later this year. The Next Great Star Marine. The Next Great Star Marine is like the Next Great Starship. It's going to be a video series that CIG do with a similar format to the Next Great Starship. The prerequisite for entering the Next Great Starship will be to design your own helmet. So the actual competition, after you've met that and you've got a relatively good helmet and they go, yes, let's put these into the shortlist, you'll then need to compete to make a Class 9 Titan suit. So this is a big lumbering suit of armour for use in the first-person shooter combat. It's something that I'm very excited about, and I think a lot of other people are as well. The FPS and this sort of thing being added into FPS is going to be great. So this sort of quite expensive suit of armour, they may never get used by you because your ship might get blown up before you can. These dropships are going to be relatively vulnerable to attack from bombers and that sort of stuff. So I love the idea of these, and I'm really looking forward to the Next Great Star Marine. But yeah, it's going to be interesting having this level of crossover and this mixture of FPS and spaceship battle. Oh, it's all good. Let's talk a little bit about VR. So with the Oculus Rift consumer headset now available on pre-order, Star Citizen is not going to be left behind with VR. It's promised to integrate it. Chris says he plans to get up to date with VR early this year. They were hampered a little bit by their heavily modified CryEngine. But most of the original CryEngine guys are now on board with Star Citizen. They've employed them in Frankfurt. It's likely a couple of people in the Frankfurt office are actually already working on integration as we speak. CIG's goal is to support all major VR headsets. And just to reiterate about mechanics, we're likely to see mining, cargo hauling, fuel gathering and refilling, scavenging, repair, and all of that sort of jazz added to Port Olisar as they become available throughout 2016. But we're also likely to see other core mechanics, such as reputation systems, or at least consequences to your actions. At the moment in 2.0 and 2.1, there's no consequences for blowing people up, for stealing their ships. There's no way to lock your ships. We'd like to see all of this sort of started to be added and implemented throughout 2016. Attack a player or a security NPC and expect trouble. And we know vaguely about some events that are happening in 2016. So there's a January live stream on the 21st from CIG. And then we've got Gamescom in Germany on August the 17th to the 21st. Obviously, CIG will be there. We've got CitizenCon probably in October in Los Angeles. We're going to have Star Citizen's anniversary live stream at some point in November too. There's likely to be other bits and bobs in there thrown in, as well as Bar Citizens done occasionally as well, and some concierge events too. 2016 is going to be a massive, probably the biggest year for Star Citizen yet. We're going to have some amazing releases, and I've probably forgotten some stuff. There's probably going to be lots of extra little surprises. If there's anything that I've missed out or you're hyped for anyway, please talk about it in the comments below. Let's have a chat. I'm super hyped at the moment. I'm really excited about this year. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help me. Have a great 2016, and yeah, let's Star Citizen, the verse, Squadron 42, woo!